Chosen one, before you scroll past this video, stop for a moment, because what you're about to hear was not written by accident. Somewhere tonight, somewhere this morning, somewhere in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, you clicked on this video for a reason you cannot fully explain, and that reason has a name. It is called divine timing. You did not find this message. This message found you. Because there is something in your life right now that feels broken beyond repair. Something that feels buried too deep to ever be dug up again. Something you have quietly grieved in the privacy of your own heart, while smiling on the outside, so no one would ask questions you were not ready to answer. Maybe it is a relationship that fell apart in a way you never saw coming. Maybe it is a dream you used to speak about with fire in your voice. A dream you have not mentioned out loud in years, because it hurts too much to say it and not see it. Maybe it is your health, your finances, your family, your name, your reputation, your faith itself. Whatever it is, hear this clearly: what was lost is not gone. It is only hidden, and hidden is not the same as finished. There is an old and quiet truth that echoes through the writings of thoughtful believers across the centuries. The idea that pain is never wasted in the hands of a good God. That what looks like ruin from where you are standing is often from a higher vantage point, simply the plowing before the planting. The soil has to be broken before it can hold a harvest. The old structure has to come down before the foundation can be laid for something stronger. You are not being punished, you are being prepared, and preparation always looks like loss before it ever looks like gain. So let us slow down here for a moment, because I do not want you to simply hear this message. I want you to receive it. Close whatever else is competing for your attention right now. Let this be the only voice in the room. Because chosen one, God is about to restore what you thought was lost, and I need you to let that sentence sit in your spirit until it stops sounding like a nice phrase and starts sounding like a promise with your name written on it. Think back for a second to the last time something in your life shattered, not just bent, not just bruised, but shattered. The kind of breaking that makes you sit on the floor of your kitchen at 2 in the morning and wonder if you will ever feel whole again. You remember that season? Maybe you're still living in it right now as you listen to these words. In that season, everything in you wanted to believe that broken was the end of the story. That once something cracks, it stays cracked. That once a door closes, it is locked forever. That once a dream dies, there is no resurrection for it. But that is not how the story of restoration has ever worked. Not once, not in any life that has ever truly encountered the presence of God. There is a story, ancient and quiet, of a man who was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and forgotten in a prison cell for years, while the world moved on without him. If you had asked him in that cell whether his dreams were dead, he might have told you yes. He might have told you that whatever future he once imagined for himself had been buried under the weight of betrayal and injustice. But the years in that pit and that prison were not wasted years. They were the exact years in which his character was being shaped into something strong enough to carry the very future he thought he had lost. And when the restoration finally came, it did not simply return him to where he started. It elevated him beyond anything he could have imagined for himself. The very people who threw him away became the people who needed him most. The very pit that seemed to bury his purpose became the foundation of his elevation. I tell you this story not because your situation is identical to his, but because the pattern is the same pattern that has repeated itself in every generation since. Loss is rarely the final chapter. It is almost always the chapter right before the turn, the darkest page just before the light breaks through, and chosen one, if you are in that dark page right now, if you feel like your story has stalled out in the chapter where everything falls apart, I need you to understand something important. You are closer to your restoration than you have ever been. The enemy of your peace does not attack a dead dream. He does not waste his energy trying to discourage something that has no future. If you are still feeling the weight of what was lost, if it still stings, if you still find yourself thinking about it in quiet moments, that is not a sign that it is gone forever. That is a sign that it still matters. And things that still matter are things that God still has plans for. Let us talk honestly about what it means to lose something. Loss is not only about what disappears. Loss is also about what it does to your belief in what is possible. That is the deeper wound, The one underneath the obvious one. You lost the job. Yes, but underneath that, you lost your confidence that you could provide. You lost the relationship. Yes, but underneath that, you lost your belief that you were worthy of being chosen and kept. You lost the health. Yes, but underneath that, you lost your sense of control over your own body and your own future. This is why restoration, when it truly comes from God, never just replaces the outward thing. It rebuilds the inward thing first. He does not simply hand you back a job, he rebuilds the confidence that was broken. He does not simply hand you back a relationship, he rebuilds the part of you that believed you were worth loving in the first place. This is why some restorations take longer than we want them to. It is not because God is slow, it is because He is thorough. He is not interested in giving you a shortcut back to where you were. He is interested in rebuilding you into someone who can actually hold what is coming without breaking under it again. I want you to picture for a moment a house that has stood empty for years. The windows are broken. The paint has peeled away under years of sun and rain. Weeds have grown up through the cracks in the driveway, and inside dust covers every surface like a grey blanket over what used to be a home full of life. Anyone driving past that house would call it abandoned. They would say it is beyond saving, that it should be torn down and forgotten. But then imagine the original owner returns. Someone who remembers what that house used to be, who remembers the laughter that once filled its rooms, who never stopped believing that underneath the decay, the good bones of that house were still there. That owner does not see a ruin. That owner sees a restoration project, and restoration projects require exactly one thing above all else: someone who refuses to give up on what everyone else has already written off. Chosen one, you are that house. And the one who is returning to your life right now has never once forgotten what you used to be. And more than that, he has never once let go of what you are still meant to become. Here is something that will change the way you see your entire waiting season. Restoration is not God trying to make up for lost time. Restoration is God redeeming lost time, and those are two very different things. Making up for lost time would mean simply giving you back what you had before, as if the years in between never happened. But redeeming lost time means that the very years you thought were wasted become part of the testimony, part of the strength, part of the wisdom that makes the new season sturdier than the old one ever could have been. Nothing about your pain will be wasted. Every tear you cried in private, every night you lay awake, wondering if you had been forgotten, every moment you questioned whether you were still chosen at all, God was collecting every single one of those moments and weaving them into the very fabric of the comeback that is now approaching your life. I want to speak now to the specific ache that so many of you carry, the ache of feeling forgotten. You watch other people's lives seem to move forward while yours feels frozen in place. You watch other people's prayers get answered on what looks like a fast track while yours seem to disappear into silence. I need you to hear this, and I need you to let it settle deep into the places where doubt has been trying to build a home. Silence is not the same as absence. When you speak into a canyon and wait for the echo, there is a delay before the sound returns to you. But that delay does not mean the canyon did not hear you. It means the sound is traveling the distance it needs to travel before it comes back with force. Your prayers have not vanished into nothing. They have been received, they have been held, and they are on their way back to you. And when they will return louder and fuller than the moment you first spoke them. Let me tell you about seeds for a moment, because there is something about the nature of a seed that explains almost everything about the season you are in right now. When a seed is planted in the ground, it disappears. From the surface, there is no evidence that anything is happening at all. If you did not know better, you would assume that seed was gone, buried, lost beneath the dirt with nothing left to show for it. But underneath the surface, in the dark, in the place no one else can see, that seed is doing the most important work of its entire existence. It is cracking open. It is pushing roots downward before it ever pushes a stem upward. It is drawing nutrients from the very soil that seems to have swallowed it whole. And then one day, without any warning to the people walking by, a small green shoot breaks through the surface. And within weeks, sometimes within days, what looked like nothing becomes something no one can ignore. Chosen one, you have been in the underground season. You have been in the place where nothing seems to be happening, where all the evidence points to loss, where it feels like you have simply disappeared into circumstances that swallowed you whole, but the roots have been growing this entire time, and what is buried is about to break the surface. There is a particular kind of restoration that God specializes in, one that is different from simple repair. Repair fixes what is broken and returns it to its original condition. But God's restoration often goes further than repair. It transforms what was broken into something with a purpose the original version never had. Think about it this way: a broken vase, once shattered, cannot simply be glued back together and pretend nothing happened. There will always be cracks. But there is an old practice, in certain cultures, of taking those broken pieces and rejoining them with gold, so that the cracks themselves become the most beautiful part of the vessel, more valuable broken and repaired than it ever was when it was simply whole and untested. This is what your restoration is going to look like. It is not going to erase what happened to you. It is going to use what happened to you as the very material that makes your comeback unforgettable. People are not going to look at your life and see someone who was broken. They are going to look at your life and see someone who was broken, and then rebuilt with something so valuable that the breaking itself became part of the beauty. I want to address something that many of you are silently wrestling with, and it is this. Somewhere along the way, in the middle of your loss, you started to wonder if you did something to deserve it. You started to replay every decision, every conversation, every choice, searching for the moment where you must have failed, must have missed something, must have brought this on yourself. Chosen one, I need you to release that weight right now. Not every loss is a consequence. Some losses are simply the cost of living in a world that is not yet fully healed, and some losses are the very doorway through which your deepest calling walks in. The people who are used most powerfully in this life are almost never the ones who sailed through untouched. They are the ones who were broken open by something they did not choose, and who, instead of staying in the wreckage, allowed that wreckage to become the very thing that gave them compassion, depth, and authority to speak into other people's pain. Your loss is not proof that you were disqualified. Your loss may very well be the exact training ground for the very assignment you were chosen for before you ever entered this world. Let us talk about timing, because timing is where so much of the discouragement lives. You expected restoration to come on your schedule. You had a timeline in your head, a season by which you assumed things would be resolved, a year, a birthday, an anniversary, a deadline you quietly set for yourself, without even realizing you had set it. And when that date came and went without the change you were hoping for, something inside you began to wonder if it was ever coming at all. I want to gently correct that thinking. God's timing has never once operated on human deadlines, not because he is careless with your pain, but because he can see the entire timeline of your life at once, while you can only see the small section directly in front of you. What feels like delay from where you stand is often precise positioning from where he stands. He is not simply waiting for a date on a calendar. He is waiting for alignment, for the right people to be in the right place, for the right doors to be ready to open, for you to be ready to walk through them without the very restoration destroying you because you received it before you were strong enough to carry it. There is a kind of premature blessing that can actually be more damaging than a delayed one. If restoration had come too early, before certain things inside you had been rebuilt, you might have repeated the same patterns that led to the loss in the first place. You might have handled the new relationship with the same insecurities that damaged the old one. You might have handled the new opportunity with the same fear that sabotaged the last one. The waiting season was never punishment. It was preparation, giving you time to become someone capable of sustaining what is coming, rather than someone who would simply lose it all over again in a different form. So what do you do while you wait? This is the question so many chosen ones ask, and it is the right question to ask, because waiting passively is very different from waiting faithfully. Waiting passively means sitting in the wreckage, arms crossed, waiting for something to change without you changing at all. Waiting faithfully means tending to what is in front of you, even while grieving what is behind you. It means showing up for the small things, staying honest, staying kind, staying open, even when your heart has every reason to close itself off from hope. It means continuing to plant seeds of good work, good relationships, and good faith, even in soil that does not yet show any visible fruit. Every faithful action you take in the waiting season is not wasted. It is being recorded, It is being remembered, and it is being woven into the very testimony that your restoration will carry. I also want to speak to those of you who have started to feel numb, who have stopped hoping altogether because hoping and being disappointed again felt like more than you could survive. Numbness is a form of self-protection, and I understand why you built that wall. But I need to gently knock on that wall today and remind you that numbness, left unchecked, becomes its own kind of prison. One that keeps out disappointment, but also keeps out the very restoration you have been waiting for. You do not have to force yourself to feel excited today. You do not have to pretend the pain is gone. But I am asking you to leave just a small crack open, just enough room for hope to slip back in. Because that crack is exactly where the light gets through. Consider the story of dry bones lying scattered in a valley. Bones so old and so forgotten that anyone looking at them would assume there was no possibility of life ever returning to that place. And yet, in that story, breath entered those bones, and what had been dead for so long stood up as a living army. The point of that story has never been about literal bones. It has always been about the places in our lives that feel completely dead, the dreams, the relationships, the callings that we assumed had no possibility of resurrection. If breath can return to dry bones, then restoration can return to your finances. If breath can return to dry bones, then restoration can return to your marriage, your health, your purpose, your joy. Nothing you have lost is too far gone for the same power that breathes life into dead things. I want you to notice something about your own resilience right now, in this very moment. You are still here. After everything that tried to break you, after every season that tried to convince you that you were finished, you are still here, still listening, still hoping. Even if that hope is smaller and quieter than it used to be. That is not weakness. That is evidence. That is proof that something inside you refused to fully give up, and that refusal is not an accident. It is the same chosen nature in you that has carried every person throughout history who was set apart for something greater than their circumstances. You were not spared from the pit so that you could simply survive it. You were spared so that you could walk out of it into the very purpose the pit was trying to prevent. Let me speak now about the people who hurt you along the way, because restoration is rarely only about circumstances. It is often also about relationships, and some of the deepest losses you have carried were not things but people. People who walked away, people who chose someone else, people who misunderstood you, people who betrayed a trust you had given freely. I'm not going to tell you that all of those relationships will be restored exactly as they were. Some restorations are not about reunion. Some restorations are about release, about finally being free from the weight of needing someone to come back who was never meant to stay. But I will tell you this. Whatever those relationships took from you, whether it was your trust, your sense of safety, or your belief that you could be truly known and truly loved, all of that is being restored, sometimes through new relationships you have not even met yet, and sometimes through a rebuilt relationship with yourself, one where you no longer need anyone else's approval to know that you are worthy of being chosen. There is something powerful about the word chosen, and I want to make sure you understand exactly what it means in this context. Being chosen has never meant being exempt from hardship. Look at every story of significance across history, and you will find the same pattern. The chosen ones are almost always the ones who walked through the fire first. They are not chosen because their path was easy. They are chosen because something in them was strong enough, or was being made strong enough, to walk through what would have destroyed someone else. And to come out the other side carrying wisdom, compassion, and authority that could not have been developed any other way. If your path has been hard, that is not evidence against your chosenness. It may very well be the clearest evidence of it. I want to gently challenge something you might be believing right now. The idea that you have to have it all figured out before restoration can begin. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to have healed completely before good things are allowed to happen to you. Healing and restoration often happen together, side by side, each one feeding the other. You do not have to wait until you feel ready. Readiness often comes in the process, not before it. So if you are waiting for some future version of yourself, some more healed, more confident, more prepared version, to finally deserve the good things that are coming, I want you to release that waiting today. The version of you sitting here right now, tired, uncertain, still carrying the ache of what was lost. That version of you is enough to receive what is coming. Restoration is not a reward for the perfectly healed. It is a gift for the willing. Let us talk about what restoration might actually look like when it arrives, because sometimes we miss it simply because we were expecting it to look exactly like what we lost. Restoration rarely returns in identical packaging. The job that comes back may not look like the job you lost, but it may be more aligned with who you have become. The relationship that comes may not look like the one you grieved, but it may be built on a foundation strong enough to hold the wiser, more discerning version of you. The dream that returns may wear a slightly different shape, but it will carry the same heartbeat, the same purpose, the same reason you fell in love with it in the first place. Do not disqualify your restoration simply because it does not arrive wearing the exact clothes you expected it to wear. Stay open to the possibility that what is coming is better suited for who you are now than what you lost was ever suited for who you used to be. I also want to remind you that restoration is rarely instant. It tends to arrive in stages, small signs before the full breakthrough, a door cracking open before it swings wide, a conversation that shifts something before the full resolution appears. Do not despise these small beginnings. Do not dismiss the small door because you were praying for a wide open one. Every restoration you have ever heard of started with something small. A single seed, a single step, a single decision to keep going one more day. Watch for the small signs right now. They may already be appearing around you, quiet whispers that something is shifting, even if the full picture has not yet come into view. There is a kind of quiet dignity in continuing to show up even when nothing seems to be changing, and I want to honor that in you right now. You have kept going. You have kept believing, even in the smallest measure, even in the moments where believing felt more like stubbornness than faith. That persistence is not unnoticed. It is being counted. It is being honored. And it is building the very foundation that your restoration will stand on. Do not grow weary in the almost. The almost is often the hardest part, harder than the beginning, harder even than the depth of the loss itself, because the almost requires you to keep hoping when hope has already been disappointed before. But the almost is also the shortest distance between where you are and where you are going. You are not far. You are close, closer than you think, closer than the discouragement wants you to believe. I want to close this message with a simple invitation. Whatever you have lost, whatever season of grief or confusion or waiting you have been walking through, I invite you to speak to it directly, right now. Out loud if you can, quietly if you must. Tell it that it does not get the final word over your life. Tell whatever was taken from you that it was never the end of your story. Only a chapter, only a season, only a shadow that could not survive the light that is coming. You were chosen before the loss ever happened. And you remain chosen now, in the middle of it, and you will still be chosen on the other side of it. When restoration finally arrives and you look back and realize that every single thing you thought was lost was simply being prepared to return to you in a form more beautiful than you ever could have designed on your own. If this message met you exactly where you needed to be met today, take a moment to let it sink in before you go on with the rest of your day. Sit with it. Let it settle into the tired places, the doubting places, the places that have been guarding themselves against disappointment for far too long. You do not have to have all the answers right now. You simply have to keep your heart open enough to receive what is already on its way to you. Restoration is not a question of if. For the chosen one who refuses to give up, it has only ever been a question of when, and that when is closer than it has ever been before. Before you leave this video, if these words reach something in you, take a second to like this video so that it can reach someone else who needs to hear it today. Someone who is sitting exactly where you were sitting when you clicked play. Leave a comment with the one word that describes what you're believing for right now, whether that is restoration, healing, breakthrough, or simply peace. Speaking it out loud, even in a comment section, is often the first small act of faith that opens the door for everything else to follow. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep walking this journey together, because there will be more messages like this one, more reminders that you have not been forgotten, more truth to stand on during the seasons when your own strength runs out. And if you know someone who needs to hear that what they lost is not gone forever, send this video to them today. You may be the very answer to a prayer they have been praying in silence for longer than you know. Chosen one, hold on a little longer. What was buried is breaking the surface. What was silent is about to speak. What was broken is being rebuilt with something stronger than what was there before. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. You are not disqualified. You are simply in the space between the loss and the restoration. And that space, no matter how long it has felt, is closing faster than you know. Walk forward in faith. Keep your heart soft, keep your hands open, and get ready. Because God is about to restore what you thought was lost, and when it comes, you will finally understand that every tear, every night, every moment of doubt was never wasted. It was always part of the story that leads here, to this exact moment, to this exact restoration, to this exact becoming.